So, you want to build your dream home. This is the video you need to watch. I'm going to show you everything that's gone into building the Lost Villa. And I'm going to show you how to avoid the biggest mistakes you can make as a beginning home builder. Because trust me, I've made a few of them and they have cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And today's video is sponsored by Wise, the financial platform that has literally powered my business for the last 5+ years. But more on that in a bit. And by the end of this video, you're going to know roughly how long it'll take for you to move into your dream home. It comes as no surprise, you've got a few steps ahead of you to build your dream home. And the first of them is you gotta find your dream land. Now for me, I built in Bali, an island full of iconic landscapes. From cliff sides, volcanoes, mountains, and jungles, I chose to build just outside of Canggu, where the future of the community is moving. It allows me to dodge most of traffic while making my way to the best gyms, coffee shops, and restaurants in about 10 minutes. But best of all, I found one of the last remaining jungles in the entire area. And if you've been to Canggu, you know finding big trees like this is very hard to come by. It's a special place. Now, how did I find this land? I did it the old-fashioned way. I got on my motorbike and I drove around until I found land plots that caught my interest. When I found a beautiful plot, I'd stop my bike, get off, and see if I could find any locals in the area. I was trying to figure out who owned the plot and were they interested in selling it. But the problem is, most of the time, there's nobody there. And secondly, if they are there, sometimes they don't speak English very well. And my Bahasa is no bueno. Saya nama?
No, siapa nama?
Siapa nama?
You just said my name?
But even if you didn't find somebody on day one, I would come back and back until I'd finally find somebody kicking around. Or I'd go to the neighbors and say, do you know who owns this plot? After doing this for a few weeks, I had a few leads, a few owners, and a few local families that were interested in selling. But there was one plot of land that caught my heart and my attention, and it was this beautiful jungle right outside of Canggu. This method of finding land is definitely going to take you more work, but I think it's super effective because it allows you to remove the realtors from the equation and, of course, their markups. The con, though, is going directly to the owner means a lot of uncertainty, a lot of time investment, and there's a chance the neighbors don't know who owns it. So if you don't have the time to just kick around and try and find that plot, then the next best bet is to find a realtor. If I were to use a realtor, the one I would use is Peter with Property at Bali. He's the one I've passed my friends on to and has done a really good job taking care of them. Now, when you find your dream land, you also have to think realistically about it. Does it have access to electricity, to water, a decent roadway? Is your land going to require a lot of investment in order to build on it? Now, if you're doing things in Bali, you also have to consider, is the landlord open to leasing that land for a long period of time? Usually a minimum of 25 years, upwards of 40. Or are they open to freehold, which is basically the term used here for ownership under a company. But it would need to be owned under your Indonesian company unless you have an Indonesian passport. So how long does this step take? If you're really lucky and you meet the right person, or you just use a realtor and get straight to the chase, you can have a piece of land locked up within a couple of weeks. I don't think that's likely, but it's possible. On average, I'd say it's going to take you 1 to 2 months, and it can take even longer, especially if you're renting or buying land with multiple owners involved. My newest land had 9 different families involved, and because of that, it's taken me nearly 6 months to finally get it under contract. I haven't shared anything about it yet, but enough on that for now. Step 2 is going to be the topography and soil test. And if you don't know, a topographer is somebody that's going to come and measure your land so you know the exact size, the slopes, where the large trees are. And once they've done all that, they take all this information and turn it into a digital file that your design team can work off of. So how long will that take? Well, usually it's just about a day. If you've got a normal and easy to measure piece of land, then it won't really slow you down. But with a more complicated and large piece of land, like the new land I just got, it's taken us nearly 2 weeks to get it all measured out. In part 2 to this video, I'll be going into a deep dive of cost and how much I spent on the Lost Villa, so you won't want to miss that video. If you want to learn more about this, then you want to check out my newsletter, which is linked down below. Step 3 is creating your design. Congrats, it's time for you to hire a designer. First of all, I want to differentiate a designer from an architect because a lot of people get this confused. A designer is highly focused on the look of your project. They design the way your space looks and feels. They'll create some mood boards, and if they're good, they'll also optimize the flow of the space to make sure it doesn't just look good as a render, but actually feels good in person. They will suggest materials, decor, provide you with renders, but they are not structural drawings. In other words, they can design a beautiful space, but that roof just might come collapsing down on you because they don't understand how much steel, how much rebar, and how much concrete is needed. If you only hire a designer, your builder, also known as a contractor, is going to have to build based off of a lot of assumptions. And that means when you start building, you might realize you needed thicker steel. You might need to completely change the design, and at worst, your building could start to slope, crack, and fall apart. Because simply put, pretty photos don't keep the second floor up top. If you hire a designer, don't expect an architect. So what's an architect? Some architects will do everything that the design team can do, but they also bring in the structural knowledge. A good architect will have an understanding of how your design choices will impact the structural integrity of your building. A good architect will not just give you detailed floor plans, but also detailed drawings that your builder can follow so they know exactly what concrete to use, which steel to use, how thick it should be, and everything else that you could need to make sure your home is standing up for several decades to come. So when you go about finding your designer or architect, you gotta ask the questions: are they design only? Are they creating the construction drawings? Are they only responsible for the home, or are they also in charge of picking out all the furniture? You see, there's all these different scopes involved. Or one step further, are they creating each piece of furniture from scratch? For Lost Villa, I started off working with an A-tier company here in Bali, but I felt I didn't have enough say in the project and the direction it was headed. I didn't like that. And this is quite typical of A-tier designers because they are very protective of their brand. When you work with them, you're basically buying a design. But I wanted to co-create my home. I did the thing that most would never do, and I walked away. I pivoted, and I lost about 12 months in doing that. That's the reason I still haven't moved into Lost Villa. But because of that choice, Lost Villa has gone from being just a beautiful home to one of a kind. And that's where I found the architect of my dreams, Single Art. This is where I saw firsthand just how different the scope of work can be from one architect to another. With my previous design firm, they basically took a few minutes to understand the idea of what I wanted, but when I started with Single Art, it was so different. I could be as involved as I wanted to be. Stefan's mission was to make sure this was my home, and most of all, that it was one of a kind. And to do that, he's brought in all sorts of patterns, shapes, materials that frankly, I haven't ever seen used on this island. He and his team have custom designed every single piece of furniture inside this house and brought in new ideas that have never been done before. Stefan and his team are the best of the best. In fact, I re-signed with them a while ago to dream up and build the next project, and I'll give you a little sneak peek of the Lost Homes. When choosing your architect, just remember that this is going to be a long-lasting relationship, so make sure it's someone you feel you can get along with and communicate with. So how long does it take to design your dream home? I think this part might surprise some of you as it did for me. When I started, I thought within 3-4 months I'd be off to the races. I mean, I've built palaces in Sims in just 3 hours. But after hiring my original design team, I realized how slowly things tend to move. And that is quite universal across all the high-end and detailed homes. Good things will take time, and on average, a well-designed home will take anywhere from 5 months on the fast end, upwards of 8 to 9 months. And I need to add that many high-end designers are in demand, and because of that, they sometimes are on a 1-year waiting list just to get started. The next is the one nobody loves: legal and permits. And this is a topic we're not going to go into, but if you want to check out the link down below, I do share my most useful resources. But one thing I will say is this is a topic that is quite complicated because things in Bali and in Indonesia tend to change a lot. So make sure you've got a trusted legal advisor. The next step is find your project manager. The right project manager will be your right hand and your representative on the job site. Their job is to make sure the builder you soon hire is tracking to complete the project on time, is following your architect's drawings, and they will help you get fair price comparisons between builders once we get to that stage. And lastly, they also might just be the person to create your BOQ, which I'll get back to that in a sec. Let me first say, this is the first of our steps that could be considered optional. I, for one, did not hire for this role, but that's only because I chose the right builder and I was highly involved in the project. But even though this decision saved me money and gave me a crash course on project management, I won't be doing this on the next project. You see, as I've gotten to the end of my build, I can now see how this person would have freed up so much of my time. It would have gotten me out of the incredibly tedious and challenging finishing stages which come in the last months of your build. But beyond just streamlining your life, I really recommend this person if you're not on site to project manage. The reason is because so much can go wrong. I've heard horror stories from friends of friends who moved into their home and after taking their first shower saw the water wasn't draining because they realized there were no holes connected to their drains. Yeah, it's an extreme example, but a project manager should stop problems before they happen, before it's too late. This is why I'd recommend hiring one. Now, how long will this take? Well, it's all about finding the right person, and that can happen on the first meeting, or it could be a series of weeks of networking to find that person that feels right to you. Either way, it shouldn't add much time, if any, to your build, because you can actually do this while your architects are working away on building out your drawings. And update, I just hired a new project manager. Getting to the end of the finishings, it became a necessity for my project, and I'll keep you updated in the upcoming build videos on how this helps the process. The next step is get a BOQ. So back to that word, BOQ, also known as Bill of Quantities. This is the list of materials and labor that you will theoretically need in order to build your dream property. Do you need 100 meters of steel, or do you just need 50? Do you need 30 centimeter thick, or do you need 40? Every major component that goes into the build should be on this BOQ list if it's well prepared. And I hope for your sake it is, because it will be used to estimate the cost of building your home. Now, who makes the BOQ? Well, that's usually a quantity surveyor, or in your case, it could be your project manager if they offer that as a service. The BOQ, or your itemized list of the things you need, is very important because it'll make our next step much easier. So how long does it take to get a BOQ? Well, it could be really fast. It could be a week if you have somebody on standby, but most of the time you're looking at a couple weeks to a month. And the next step, you gotta get your finances set up. Whether you're building in Bali, Miami, Dubai, or Belize, whether you like it or not, you're about to become a part-time accountant, having to go into your banking applications, set up transactions, or authorize them, and you're gonna have to do it hundreds of times over the coming build. From a monthly payment to your builder, to down payment on your curtains, the amount of transactions that are about to happen will shock you. On an average month, I'm probably sending 10 to 20 payments out, and it's only going up from here as we've entered the finishings. And with that, you want a financial platform that's user-friendly, that allows you to move money fast, and that is well optimized for international vendors. That way you're getting the best of foreign exchange rates. And that's why I couldn't be more excited about today's video sponsor, a money transfer solution I've been using since 2018, and that is Wise. Wise has an international account that has saved me thousands of dollars on foreign exchange fees. But maybe more importantly, it has made my life so much simpler. As a digital nomad, sometimes clients pay in euros, sometimes I have to make purchases in pesos, and sometimes I have to pay my team in pounds. Most nomads are just losing a ton of money having to convert, but what they don't know is they can get way better rates than any exchange house or just about any major bank using Wise. Wise has empowered me to pay out my remote team with no transaction fees. It has one of the most intuitive banking apps I've ever come across, and I have downloaded at least a dozen at this point. And whether you're running a business or building your dream home, the cool thing is you can set up an admin to be able to set up transactions on your behalf, and all you need to do is go into the mobile app and authorize those payments, allowing you to quickly send off payments without becoming a part-time accountant. Wise also gives me dedicated banking details for different currencies, which means your clients can often wire you money locally, which can help you avoid expensive SWIFT fees and delays. When I first downloaded Wise back in 2018, it instantly became my go-to international account. I've gotten my entire team on it, I've put my friends onto it, and now I'm sharing it with you. And for setting up an account with Wise, you'll get an exclusive bonus by seeing it here first. Just check that link down below. Grateful to have Wise sponsoring today's video. The next step is find your contractor, or as you may know it, a builder, but we'll call it a contractor moving forward. Your contractor is the person that will build your dream home. They are the ones that will take renders and ideas and be the ones to turn it into the physical space. Or at least that's what they're supposed to do, so choose wisely. They need to be someone you trust, not to cut cost and pocket the profits. If you hire the cheapest contractor on the block, be warned, in the end, it could be the most expensive. So here's how you're going to make an informed decision and try and get yourself with the right person, the right company to build your dream home. So I interviewed about 7 or 8 different builders. This chapter was basically dating. Most builders promising you the world, telling you how amazing they are, how fast they can deliver the final result, and how their quality is the best in town. But I did my best to look through the smoke screen, and at this point, I picked 4 of the companies that I was most comfortable with, and I shared my BOQ. And here's why you want one. Imagine you have the renders and the floor plan. This contractor says they'll do it for $300,000. This contractor says $400,000, and the last one says $500,000. All 3 contractors got the same information, so let's just take the cheapest one, right? Wrong. Without a BOQ, you could be comparing apples to oranges. Maybe it turns out your cheapest contractor quoted underpowered AC units, windows and sliders that don't pass your quality standard, and worse, maybe they even use supplies in the bid that are unfit to structurally keep your home sound. And if you're like most home builders and don't know that there are varying grades of concretes and so on, how on earth are you going to be able to call out the contractor who's using cheap and dangerous materials? Simply put, you can't. So the BOQ restores some order in this process, allowing you to get closer to comparing an apple to an apple. Now with a BOQ, you tell the contractors what they are bidding on instead of letting them decide for themselves how to build the house. So send your BOQ to the contractors you're most serious about. After 2 weeks to maybe as much as a month, they should have submitted the estimated building price. And you might be thinking, great, we have a BOQ, life is easy now, right? Well, also kind of wrong. After all this drawn out song and dance, these quotations will still require inspection by you or your project manager if you hired one. For my project, it was just me, so I spent way too long in Excel spreadsheets highlighting, inspecting, and comparing costs between contractors. And by the end of it, I saw a contractor doing some things that I believe was to underinflate the price and try and win the bid. I immediately eliminated that company, but in the end, I didn't even go for the next cheapest. I went for the second most expensive bid, and that was somebody that not only gave me a good feeling in our meetings, but had also successfully built a beautiful home for one of my friends. So I called Fatine and the Binkai Langat team, and I told her I was in. We signed in a Bali coffee shop, and I handed over a ton of money to someone I barely knew. It was honestly really scary. For the early stages of the project, I'd hired a third-party surveyor to monitor their progress and the workmanship. But after 4 months of my surveyor saying, "Looks good, boss, bagus," I had a pretty good feeling I'd made the right choice. Now that I'm nearing the end of my build, I can say that this was one of the best decisions I made in the entire process. Building with Binkai Langat is the reason I have enjoyed this process. It's one of the reasons why Lost Villa will be one of the most spectacular homes, not just on the island, but well beyond. But most of all, it's the reason I'm entering into my next project with so much confidence. My big tip is take your time when finding your contractor, because this is a decision you don't want to get wrong. If you want to get in touch with my most trusted contacts like Fatine, I'll share that all down below. The next step is, if you're in Bali at least, bless that land. Bali is an incredible island with a ton of unique cultural practices, and whether you're a foreigner or a local, this is an essential part of your build. You must show respect to the land, to the people, and so before beginning construction, we held this beautiful ceremony to ensure that our building, our home, would be welcomed by the island, and also to avoid bad luck. We had the first brick blessed, and we buried it beneath the soil. 1 hour later, the ceremony was complete. We ate some awesome Balinese food and celebrated the beginning of the construction stage. And the next step is your land preparation. And depending on your land, this could either be a total breeze or it could be a lot of work. If you bought one of those typical flat Canggu rice fields, things should be pretty smooth sailing. But if you're building on challenging land, maybe you've got a steep incline or loose soil, you've got a lot of work ahead of you and a lot of investing. I've come to learn that retaining walls are very expensive. In part 2, we go into cost and you'll understand just how expensive that really is. So for Lost Villa, we built into a nice hillside, which brings a lot of personality to this land. I wouldn't do it any other way. But the slope came with a fair share of work and investment. When you have a hillside and you place thousands of pounds of concrete and steel on top, that land starts to want to slide downward. It starts to lose its shape, and that can lead to cracks inside your home, or worse, So there's a few common ways to hold your land and your home in place. And the main way is a retaining wall. And retaining walls can be cheap in low risk areas like a roadway, where you might just dig up a hole and load it up with a bunch of boulders to stop the land from shifting too much. But if your area is more high risk or higher gradient, you might need to build a full concrete wall. Now, the other style that we needed for this massive slope is what's known as bore piling, which is basically digging to the center of the earth and filling that hole with concrete and steel so that the land holds its shape. For Lost Villa, we had to do bore piling for the floating pool and the cinema and bedroom underneath it. And more recently, we had to reinforce the entire perimeter of Lost Villa and my neighbor's home so that when we start building the next door project, the Lost Homes, that land and that slope will stay put. And yes, that bill hurt. So how long will it take? Well, for some projects, it might not take any time at all. For my project, it was about 1 month's worth of work. The next step, finally, let's build. Now, the way I see it is there's basically two main chapters in your build. Chapter 1 is the structural. You see nothing turn to something. From steel foundations to concrete pouring to basically building that skeleton, it's all handled by one company. Basically, they have full control over this process. From my experience, I didn't have to be very involved at all. As long as your architects and design team have done a good job outlining the drawings, the contractor can follow them down to the T. This chapter was paradise. One bonus tip is if you're building in Bali, it's a great thing to start right after the end of rainy season, so you don't get stalled by any inclement weather. Now, chapter 2, the finishings. A very ironic name for something that never seems to want to finish. This is where you're about to become loaded with hundreds, if not thousands of decisions. Do you want tile, ceramic, concrete, hardwood? Oh, you want tile? Okay, great. Do you want light gray, white gray? Oh, white gray with spots? That's great. Bad news is they're out of stock. All right, we'll go with the light gray. Yeah, that one got discontinued. We'll take the white one? Sorry, the white one's 4 times the price. Now imagine this, but across every single part of your home, from the door stops to the curtain fabric, and even how the curtain fabric is folded. You should see some of the group chats between Single Art, the design team, and the curtain supplier. It would give you so much context to the chaos of building. Now, some of you might just be better off assigning that decision making to your designer. If you trust their opinion and think they've got the right style for you, then this doesn't have to actually be so terrible. But I love to be involved. I'm building my dream home just as I think you're trying to build yours. So prepare for a lot of decisions, more than you could ever imagine. And where finishings get really tricky is you went from having just the contractor to communicate with to now having dozens of people relying on your decisions. And it only gets worse if you're building something as complicated and intricate as Lost Villa. Let me give you one example. Here is a render of the island, the big center console in the middle of the kitchen. This one piece involves the following specialists. On this island, we are using Dectin from Builder Shop that has to come from Java. We're using specialty metal that had to be meticulously designed and brought over from Italy. We're using soft closing hinges from Germany from a company called Bloom. We brought in a stove that now needs to be deassembled so that it can be reconstructed inside of the Dectin. And we're putting a downdraft hood that will suck up all the smoke during cooking, and that piece is being brought from Italy. And all this needs to go to Tabanon to be assembled by our furniture builder. If any single one of these components are late, everything is stalled. That is my fair warning to anyone that wants to build something truly incredible. It's going to take you a lot of patience, a lot of love, and a lot of time. But I say to you now, when you visit the Lost Villa for yourself, you'll see why those little details make all the difference. And one more thing I do need to add on is that when you get to finishing stages and you're working with other vendors, be warned that the industry standard is to overpromise and underdeliver when it comes to delivery times. Someone says it's going to be there in a week, it's probably 2. When somebody says it's going to be a month, it might be 2 months. And in the case of my windows, I don't think they're coming. But that's a story for another day. So how much time does it take to build that home? This totally depends on what end of the spectrum you've chosen. Are you going with the Santorini white painted concrete? Well, this could probably be done in 8 months. Literally, my neighbor started after me and finished well before me. But if you want to build something like Lost Villa, my guess is you're probably looking at about 14 months if you have all your plans and everything ready from the start. If you're a first-time home builder and you haven't quite got the kinks out of your system yet, you might want to add another 4 months on that. Just know, finishing the finishing stage will feel like a mirage. Every time you get closer, it gets further away. But just because the house isn't finished yet doesn't mean I can't celebrate what has been accomplished so far. So today we are celebrating the move-in that it hasn't happened, but we're celebrating anyways. And we're gonna make ourselves some drinks here, celebrate with some friends tonight. To make this construction site party happen, I needed to buy supplies, drinks, and hire these two legendary bartenders, which is where my international Wise account always comes in handy. Using my USD balance, I fired off a couple of payments in Indonesian rupiah to the bartenders' local bank accounts, and immediately they received Indonesian rupiah, the local currency in Bali. I paid one of the lowest exchange rates on the market, and the night was an amazing success. This is just one of the ways I have been using Wise for the last 5 years. Can't recommend signing up enough, and it's free to do, so check out that link down below. The next step is you gotta hire the specialist. You see, you might have thought that contractor would be able to do everything for you. I thought that naively at the beginning, but I was wrong. Contractors, for the most part, are generalists. They're not usually a specialist. Your contractor can certainly plop lights in your ceiling. They understand how to do it, but what they might not understand is how to create a moody scene at night. How to gracefully illuminate your walls where they don't blind you or your guests as you walk down the hallway. That's why I hired Alditra Lighting. Joey is our lighting specialist. If you want a green garden, yeah, your contractor knows where to buy the plants and can easily dig the holes and throw them in, but to know what plants perform best in the shade, or how to get a purple flowered plant that thrives in your home, then you're gonna wanna bring in the specialist. And that's why I went to Anton, and he's definitely been the guy for the job. The more high-end the home, likely the more specialists you'll have. In our case, we've got a landscape specialist, a lighting specialist. On top of those specialists, we also have an audio, a cinema specialist, and the list just goes on and on. To have the most streamlined experience, once you have your floor plans for your home, you want to send that over to the specialists you want to work with. That way they can plan the garden, the location of your speakers and wiring, or any of those items that require pre-planning. If you wait too late, you might have to reopen walls, cut open ceilings, and basically undo a lot of the work your contractor has done. Your project manager will be a great person to help you plan out the different stages and help you see things before they arrive, preventing standstills and costly mistakes. So how long does it take? Well, every specialist is so different from the last. But if you do this in parallel with the building of your project, it shouldn't really add any extra time. Hey, if you've made it this far, it's probably because you're finding a lot of value in this video. And I hope that my last 2 years of successes, mistakes, failures, and expensive costs are gonna allow you to streamline your process, allow you to save money and meet that right person to help build your dream home. If you're finding this helpful, I would just ask for a little thumbs up. I can promise you there's a ton more value I have to give, so hit that subscribe button and let's hang out some more. The final step, you gotta get her done. All I'm gonna say is enjoy the process because it is a journey. But even though I haven't yet moved into my home, I can already say it's been worth it. It's been amazing. It's been fun. It's been challenging. And I would love to now talk about how long this entire process should in theory take you. My best guess is as follows. The first 3 months are going to be you finding land, finding a designer. From the 3rd month to the 10th month, it's going to be a lot of time spent with your design team and your architects to basically get to a place where you have an understanding of what it is you're building, how to actually build it, and at this stage, you should also have a BOQ to send out to multiple contractors. And I will say that even though you may want to meet contractors early, they probably won't take you seriously until you've got those drawings. Good contractors are very busy and also very selective. From the 10th month to about the 1 year mark, you hopefully have selected your contractor and you're now ready to break ground. From month 12 to month 18, you're pretty much in that structural phase where you're getting the structure, the skeleton up, and you're starting to see nothing turn to something. Now from the 18th to the 26th month, you are going to be in the finishing stages, assuming you're about a 14-month build. And at month 26, well, you should be able to move in. So that means if you start the process today, you're looking at 2 years and 2 months to be able to move into your dream home. I hope that timeline isn't too disheartening, but what I will say is that from my experience, the most challenging projects are also the most meaningful. The feeling of sleeping in a home I co-designed, co-created is undoubtedly going to be one of the most rewarding feelings in the world. I can't wait to host my family, my friends, and I can't wait to host you in this beautiful, one-of-a-kind home. The moment my mom and dad walk through those doors is going to be one of the most proud son moments of my entire life. I've pushed back their flight a few times now, but the day is coming very soon. One day, I hope to have you as a guest of the Lost Villa, and if you're curious to know how much it costs to build, that's all going to be shared in part 2, which is either live and linked here, or it's not out yet, but it's coming soon. And if you want to get early access to the waiting list for these beautiful 6 units, then you definitely want to check out that mailing list down below. It's also where I share my most trusted contacts, more tips and tricks to building, and I'm even thinking of maybe starting a community for us builders in the area. And don't forget about that WISE bonus by signing up with the link down below. Let's get lost again in the next one.